First off, we'd like to welcome our panel today. We have 4 great speakers with us. First off is Grant Cosgriff, who is the Executive Director at Triathlon Victoria. Grant has been at the helm of TV for the past 6 years. He came into multisport after working for the state government through Sport and Recreation Victoria, and has previously held the role of CEO for both Rowing Victoria and Tennis Victoria. He was also awarded Vic Sports Victorian Sports Administrator of the Year in 2019. Grant, where are you?
I'm here.
Thank you. Next we have Dr. Caitlyn Honey. Caitlyn is the General Manager for Community Engagement at Athletics Victoria. Caitlyn has a passion for equality, which led her to complete her PhD in sports sociology. With experience researching the gender and sports space, Caitlyn was the initial project lead for TV's Gender Equity Strategy and Action Plan. She's also the chair of our Women in Triathlon Working Group. And prior to joining Athletics Victoria, Caitlyn worked with Cricket Victoria across their social cricket programs. Hello, Caitlyn.
Hello. You made me sound much nicer on paper.
Next, we have Marty Cuthbert. Marty is the Head of Facilities and Infrastructure at the City of Casey here in Victoria. Marty is a qualified civil engineer and has worked across local government and YMCA in Victoria. Marty's interest in triathlon started 5 years ago after she joined the Hawthorn Tri Club in their Try program. And since then, Marty has gone on to complete 2 Ironman 70 events and has represented Australia at the 2019 ITU World Championships in Switzerland. A qualified coach and personal trainer, Marty is passionate about triathlon as a vehicle for health and fitness and community camaraderie and achievement. Hello, Marty.
Hi.
And our last speaker is Kirsty Forsdike. Kirsty is a researcher in women's safety in sport and a lecturer in management at Trobe University. Kirsty is passionate about women's sport, wellbeing and safety, and has spent over the past decade working and publishing as a researcher specialising in violence against women. Kirsty took up triathlon in 2012 and has completed several Ironman and half Ironman events, as well as various other distances over the years. She's also a member of the Western Suburbs Tri Club, loves the triathlon community and the exceptional support among women who participate. Hello, Kirsty.
Hi.
So, Grant, if I could just start with you. Triathlon Victoria is helping to steer the state government's Change Our Game initiative for multisport and opening more opportunities for women and girls. Can you briefly just take us through triathlon's involvement in that and the steps being taken to close the gender gap?
Yeah, thanks, Bron. And I suppose for everyone who doesn't know who's on this this call today is that Bronwyn failed to introduce herself, I don't think. So Bronwyn Slatter's our host and MC this morning. Bron looks after our marketing and comms for Triathlon Victoria, but also is the lead in relation to the work being done by Triathlon Victoria in the gender equity space, and works closely with the working group on trying to do everything that we can to not only increase the opportunities for women to be involved in triathlon, but also to create a pathway towards the leadership positions in triathlon, whether they be volunteer, coach, official, board, subcommittees, etc. And there's a genuine commitment from the top of our organisation, being our President and Chair, Paul Stevens, all the way through our organisation around being an equitable organisation, inclusive of everyone. And our real formal involvement in this started in 2018 as part of the Change Our Game Workforce Initiative grants, where we focused a lot on coach and official education, training, and the opportunities within those. And we can say some 2 years later that we've managed to achieve essentially an equitable representation of men and women on the field of play in triathlon at 50-50. And that also extends to the fact that our senior team at triathlons is 50-50 in terms of gender. That to me is a really important step, because it's about a clear and active demonstration of our commitment to gender equity. So we want people to be able to see that men and women are equally represented across our sport. For the current period, we're about 62% male participation, 38% female. So we've got some work to do from a participation perspective. And we've still got some work to do across sort of that, the coaching interface, which is where a lot of people start their experience of the sport in terms of growing the number of women who are accredited coaches, and secondly, supporting those through the pathway of coaching. So I think the one thing that I hope everyone leaves this call today is that our commitment's very genuine. Our commitment's very practical. We have founded our action plan based on the research that Caitlyn and Liz McKevikas did back in 2018. So it's from a position of understanding, and the form of that research was about talking to people and listening to their experiences. So that sort of puts in perspective us as an organisation, I think, and I see today as a really great start. I'm thrilled by the number of people that are on this call, and I'm thrilled by the fact that it's not just limited to Victoria, but there are people from across Australia who hopefully can join us in a sort of a real practical advocacy of creating that 50-50 throughout our sport, because there is no reason other than history why our participation is not 50-50.
Caitlyn, I'll throw to you. You've been heavily involved in analysing equality in sport. What made you get involved in this particular initiative, and what are some of the strategies that need to be implemented in sport to create change?
Yeah, number one, thank you so much for having me, Triathlon Victoria. And I think in answer to the first part of your question around what made me get involved in this initiative, I think I did some research when I was first exploring some different job opportunities, and this Triathlon Victoria job came up, as Grant said, back in 2018. And the moment that I met Grant and also one of his committee members, I just knew that there was straight away going to be commitment from the very top. And I think that for me spoke volumes, because I'm so passionate about equality for all that I thought, I think I can really work with these group of people to help, reduce the barriers, find out and understand people's experiences within the sport, and provide some sort of support and guidance in progressing not just the participation side of things in getting us to 50-50 male-female, but also empowering coaches and committee members and developing greater resources to help, people on their journey towards equity. So I guess from that perspective, I think that was there was a really strong commitment from the top, which I'm really grateful to have been a part of and been able to work with. Outside of that, I think the personal passion I have definitely stemmed from not being very good at sport, but really wanting to play a lot of sport. And, I always followed my brother around when I was younger, and I tried really hard to get involved in every single activity that he was doing. And there were barriers, and I'm, not that old. Like I was a child of the 90s and the 2000s, and to still have been told, no, you can't do this or you can't do that was a bit of a reflection on the time. And I really want to be able to change that for other people. I want more children and young adults coming through, you know, feeling confident and comfortable enough to do anything that they want to do. So that's been a really big passion of mine. And I think, you know, TriVic, the whole team have helped, I guess, foster that passion, which has been really great. In terms of the actual strategies that we've been doing over the last 9 months of the subcommittee being together, I guess like the big one I'd love to kind of signpost here is that we're working on a bit of a questionnaire to help guide the clubs in better understanding their role within themselves and within triathlon more broadly around gender equity. And we'll actually use all of that information to try and give really specific support and guidance to everyone. And that for me has been really exciting to develop with the entire team. So I think, you know, in the next few weeks, we'll be seeing that come out, and we'll be able to help all of the clubs as much as possible in not only filling out and being honest with the form, but also what the next steps are along your journey towards gender equity within your club. So that's probably the biggest one that I wouldn't mind speaking about today.
Marty, you're a member of the Hawthorn Tri Club. What do you consider some of the sort of challenge areas for women at club level, and what are some of the things that can be done, I guess, to help reduce this?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and there's, you know, huge generalisation that, you know, men can tend to be a little bit more competitive than women, but I think a really big thing within a club is encouraging not just, you know, competing in triathlon, but simply participating. I think it's quite easy within a club culture to be quite competitive, both within the club and also, you know, in triathlon races and competitions. So I think a really key part is encouraging participation, encouraging personal improvement, and, you know, having a culture where it's okay to be bad at things. And, you know, it's not all about being at that top end of swim, bike and run. I think there's also the element of creating a really safe and supportive place for women within, you know, your training sessions, within your social events, and having key leaders in your club model respectful relationships and model that support regardless of gender. And I think as well, another aspect is providing flexibility of involvement. So, you know, quite often, or traditionally, triathlon training has been structured around those 6 a.m. sessions, that Saturday morning ride, that Sunday run. You know, we know many women have caregiving responsibilities or full-time work. So, you know, providing flexibility in your training options, as well as, you know, social memberships and ways they can stay involved, stay engaged without being part of a race or part of a certain program, I think is really, really beneficial.
And I think as you're as we mentioned earlier, you're a qualified civil engineer. How have you approached sort of pursuing a career that's, let's say, fairly male-dominated workforce? What advice do you sort of have for others progressing in sort of similar environments, and even in sport where we find there is that male dominance?
Yeah, I would say straight up, don't let it stop you. You know, if you see something that is an industry or an event or a sport or whatever that appears to be male dominated, don't let that stop you. Don't make that think that that's not something you can do and that's not something you should do. I'd also say, like, and probably something I've learned over time is not to rely, like, too often people define themselves by their job and by their expertise and what they do. And I've found over time that you can't lean on that as your only mode of identity and your only mode of confidence, because, you know, if that gets shot down, or if someone challenges that or challenges you, it just, you know, it pulls at you, and it pulls at your confidence and your identity. So I think it's really important having outlets like triathlon, you know, or other areas of your life where, you know, you can build that confidence, where you can have an identity away from your work and away from just that. And I think another huge aspect, or another piece of advice that I would give would be, just to acknowledge that you can't change everyone's attitude and everyone's minds. I think it's fun to surprise people, you know, with what you are capable of. But I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be that 5% or that 10% who don't want to see you in the room. And I think just accepting that and instead devoting your energy into places where you do get energy and support back.
And I'll just move to Kirsty quickly before we go into some of the other questions that came through with registrations. Kirsty, you have a love of the tri community and the support among women who do participate. What was your first impression of triathlon when you first came into multisport?
That's quite a huge question. I think I made the joke before when I was going to be asked something like this. I could talk for the rest of the day, to be honest. I came into the sport actually after a couple of years of going through IVF. And so I felt somewhat disconnected from my own body and socially as well. So I'd initially looked at triathlon to be a bit of a physical challenge and a bit of a relief to make me feel strong again and capable. And I'd been playing sort of field hockey up to that point. So I kind of thought, oh, my social community's done. I've got the hockey, it's a team sport. But when I actually turned up to my first race, which was a duathlon at the Western Suburbs Tri Club, and then a club training session as well there, I really quickly realised that despite it technically being an individual sport, I actually didn't see anything individual about it at all. So the club, in terms of like all men and women, everyone embraced new members, including myself, and I immediately felt part of this sort of extended family. And there was an overwhelming culture of inclusion and acceptance, no matter who you were or what you were capable of doing. So from day one, I made lifelong friends, and I still have this wonderful core group of mates from the Western Suburbs to this day, from those who managed to qualify for the Golden Grail of Kona to those who just literally come along for the shits and giggles, like seriously, just turn up to be with your mates. But what amazed me in the sport was the community amongst women particularly, no matter where we trained or raced. So some of my clearest memories of at the start at Western Suburbs was actually cheering all the women on course, which at the start there weren't that many initially. But we all raced together, and the first time I met a woman called Zoe Ferguson, who some of you may know, was when we ran past each other on the course. She was much further ahead of me, I'll point out, much further ahead. But at the end of the race, we actually went up to each other, didn't know each other, and we hugged. That was the first time we actually, properly spoke to each other. And about a couple of weeks later, we were running in the Yuyangs, and even just last week, she raced up at the Sunny Coast. And I was sending messages to her to say, good luck, smile for all of us, because, we'd love to be there, kind of thing. And I've got that with a lot of female triathletes, so including some lifelong friends like Jill, who's the president of the Western Suburbs, great friends Monty and Kez down there, Jodie Gilchrist, who's now in Western Australia, and even Renee Keeley, who's now a professional triathlete. And I've met some of these people through online networks, but then you meet face to face at races, and they become an incredible friendship network. So I actually see triathlon as very much a team sport rather than an individual sport.
And Grant, just back to you for a moment. We talk so much about, club environments and racing, but I guess as the sport of a whole, what are the non-racing opportunities available to women in multi-sport?
Yeah, I spoke earlier on about the broader workforce. I'd love to highlight the fact that we've got a gender diverse board. We have been in a 9-person board. We've been a 5-4 mix ever since I've been involved, since 2014. It's really been a non-issue. And really only, and we've never had that as a mandated requirement until 2018 as part of as the state government's board quotas came in. But I suppose that was one of the things that, made us reflect that prior to 2018, we didn't need a rule to be gender diverse. We actually saw it as something that was really important to us and also important to the broader community, that we had a really a good understanding of that. And that's replicated across, you know, the various working groups that are involved. Governance and finance, we've got a technical committee as well, and then the roles within sport, volunteers at clubs, coaches, officials. There's plenty of ways to get involved, but I wanted to draw back a little bit into both Marty and Kirstie's experiences, because one thing that triathlon doesn't do well is that it becomes a focus about competition possibly pretty quickly. And that's not the reason why most people get involved. The competition's a reason, but perhaps the performance is not one. And when I talk about that, it's, yeah, the competition's great because it gives someone, as they start into the sport, a goal. So, you know, I'm going to train for X period of time. At the end of that, I'm going to put it on the line and I'm going to have a race. And we even fall into the trap of, do we call them races? Do we call them events? We try to use language that doesn't make it as scary or as confrontational. We don't call ourselves competitors. You know, we like to say I'm participating in a triathlon, because quite often it's a very personal thing. It's about, you know, me versus the course, not about everyone else who's on the starting line. So we get this shift towards competition pretty quickly, and triathlon clubs can be it's all about the next race. It's all about getting faster. It's all about that. And I think we miss the part of, we are a healthy lifestyle, swim, bike, run environment. So it's not about racing. That's not the purpose. The purpose is, we are a community of really healthy individuals who get out on a daily ad hoc basis to connect with other people, to ride our bikes, run, go into nature, have a swim, put our head underwater so we can't hear anything else, have a reflective moment. And that's where the beauty is. And I think the real hard part is that gets lost sometimes really quickly in what we do. So I think if there's one thing that I look at now, is about talking to people about saying, the amount of time we spend training is where we need to get our enjoyment, because that is 10 or 20 times more than the amount of time we spend in competition. So, you know, have that sense of gratitude, experience the joy of getting out and the social connections that come with that. And that's what will keep people in triathlon clubs, not as much as Kona's an aspiration for probably everyone at some point. That's not that's not the thing that keeps us going. So for people on here, I'd love all of you, if you're not involved, to be involved, but to be involved and be an advocate for the fact that it's the healthy lifestyle, and the fact that we provide this training or activity environment and this connection into other people, that's the real fundamental, not a race day and a start and finish line. They've got their place, but they're just not front and centre all the time.
Thank you, Grant. We're up to sort of 1 o'clock. For the next 10 minutes or so, we're just going to open the floor to some questions and answers. We do have a few questions that came in with registrations, so we'll make a start with those. And if anyone else has any questions that they would like, if you could just pop them in the chat box and just assign who the question is for in our panel, that would be great. I guess the first question, which I'll open up to all four of you, what are some of the things that clubs can actually do to assist make their environment more female friendly?
I'm happy to start on this if everyone's all right. Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think it's something that clubs are always trying to think about, how to make sure they're open and engaging for women. I think the important thing to always remember is that as women, we're not sort of one homogenous group. We're all very, very different, and as you can see on even the panel today, the way we approach it and the way we see it and why we do the sport or any sport can be quite different. And our various challenges that we face can be quite different as well. The different enablers or barriers to participation. And that might include our socioeconomic backgrounds, access issues and time constraints, as we've already heard. But one thing is certain, that I think sport is very rarely, as Grant was saying, it's very rarely about doing a race and just a race. And it's really the social cultural environment that's really, really important. So thinking about things like flexibility, support, encouragement, connections. And I think one of the interesting things that came out of the evaluation of the Vic Health's This Girl Can campaign, which most people have probably seen at some point, it showed that women actually fear being judged. So I think it's really important that as a sport and in our individual clubs that we make sure that it's a judgment-free and safe, supportive environment for everyone, and not just for women, but all types of women and men and children, so we have that inclusivity. And I know that at my local club at Western Suburbs, they've been working quite hard over the last couple of years, with Jill heading this up, is providing a space for women to participate. So again, it's not just about the racing, but we get women together, and if they haven't sort of done it before, pairing them up with buddies. And so they'll have someone along with them, either swimming with them, cycling with them, running with them. And what I really love about that is it's not just that sort of during the time that we're out there, but it's actually afterwards is the camaraderie, that seeing these women sort of engaging with the sport potentially for completely the first time, never thought that they would ever swim in open water. And the joy and laughter that they seem to have in doing this, I think is fantastic. So having those sorts of environments and occasions for women to come together in different ways, I think is really important. And I think we also need to think about that sort of, when we think about women, we think about across their entire life course. So right from young women, from girls coming through, right through to one of my heroes, who's Shirley Ralston. She's a Kiwi, in her 70s, been racing since her 50s, and she races all around the world, races all sorts of events. She's completely nutty. I've met her a few times. I love her to bits, and yeah, I want to be her when I grow up. But it's essentially, I think it's that love and joy, and making sure there's something for everyone, all our ages, all where we come from, and how we can participate given what our daily life challenges generally are.
And I guess that segues nicely sort of into the next question, which came in from Simone from Perth Hills Triathlon Club. What are some ideas or approaches to help keep middle-aged women who often leave the sport engaged and see that they come back?
Yeah, I was just about to say, Kirsty.
Someone else a go. I'll give someone else a go.
Does anyone else have any other comment?
I'd probably just say, I think, being flexible about your level of involvement, really like what Grant had to say about, enjoying the process of training and not feeling like it has to be about that race day or that event day. I think remaining engaged could look like, might not look like a Saturday morning ride. It might look like a Tuesday morning ride, or something else, and just finding those buddies or those club options that allow you to just stay engaged at some level. I think as well, and I know we were talking just before this call about, and I mean, I can't speak for myself, but I think mothers are generally great at planning for their children and planning their children's school, their children's lunch boxes, their children's sport, and all that sort of thing. So I think applying those same principles to yourself is create those plans and those routines for yourself. Don't let your children just be the only priority there. And probably a more recent example I can speak of from Hawthorn Triathlon Club's perspective is that and I know we've got a few of those ladies on this call, is that we've been doing a lot more Zoom sessions, like Zoom strength sessions, Zoom and Zwift cycling sessions. And I think, we've had really great participation from females in that sort of, 40 to 60 age bracket. And I think just having that flexibility of the session delivery, and for them to be able to be at home and be able to have the kids in the same room or in the next room, I think has been a huge silver lining from this period.
I think it's also, like we're talking about a lot of people actually, doing the swim, bike, run, but there's a lot of us who do other stuff in triathlon, all the volunteering as well. We're not necessarily all runners, swimmers and bikers. So in terms of, again, how we engage people throughout their life course, is there's many ways in which women can engage with the sport, whether it be through different supporting, coaching, any form of leadership within their club, as well as all the various types of volunteering that we always need. My favourite times have been, just popping down to the club and helping out when the kids' races are on, or, all those sorts of things. And I think we don't want to forget that as well. There's many ways to participate in triathlon. We don't necessarily have to get on a bike to do it.
Our next question, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think if one thing, as crappy as COVID is, especially if you live in Victoria, if there's one thing that's come out of it, we've learnt to utilise technology in a much more effective manner because we've been forced to. So the opportunities in the future for people to connect into training and some of that strength and conditioning or Pilates or Zwift in their own time, in their own space, without having to go through the palaver of kids and childcare or getting there or whatever it might be, is going to change the way in which we do some of this. So I think that's a really effective thing. The other part I suppose I always like to drag in is that we're really good about finding time when we want to find time. Everyone's great about telling each other how busy they are, but I was listening to something the other day and the quote was, "There's no pride in busy, there's pride in progress." For me, that's about connecting and saying, when we set ourselves a task, we're really good at making good of that. And so for anyone, this is not about men or women, for anyone to make a commitment to live a healthy and well-rounded life is to commit to turning up time and place to things that contribute to that. And that is about training, and that is about connecting and sharing experiences with other people. So I think there's a bit of, we always need to sort out, what's important to us, and we find a way of making what's important to us happen. So to me, there's a bit of, I like Marty's point about, it's about looking after yourself. And I'd like to probably add to that is it's about prioritising sometimes yourself above some of the other things and sharing the load or asking for help or whatever that might be. So, there's really great opportunities, but there's also comes with it a sense of making the commitment and then turning up. And that's sometimes the hardest part, but once you start, it becomes the easiest part.
Yeah, I agree. And Grant, I think what you're saying there as well, I think all of us here probably feel like we've become better people because of the sport of triathlon, whether it be through the confidence we've built or the discipline of training and I guess the sense of achievement. So reminding yourselves of those reasons why you train and why you participate in triathlon, I think it flows through to other areas of your life.
And people, well, depending how much anyone on this has ever heard me speak before, but I'm pretty consistent around two words to do with triathlon, and I think triathlon's both inspirational and aspirational. So it provides inspiration because you see other people and you are inspired by their commitment or their pursuit of excellence, or just the fact that they're turning up. It could be any range of those things. And then it's aspirational because I think then you get a sense of setting some new goals for yourself, and that's not all. That's sometimes about faster, it's sometimes about longer, it's sometimes about doing it differently. And I know my experiences have been, I've gone short course, long course, off-road, back onto long course, back onto short course, and always find something different to then keep it interesting and get me turning up over and over again. And the other part I think about triathlon is, you know, what better way to go and have a holiday than to go and do something, to go and race somewhere, and then to have a couple of weeks to recover and reflect. And you know, I listened to Marty's piece with Hello Harry last week, that's now available on YouTube and via my LinkedIn profile later on today if anyone's interested. But you know, Marty, if you didn't say travel about 15 times, then you must have said it 50 times. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to combine a whole bunch of things that you like about life.